This is the Louie Tee Network.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie Tee? Welcome to day 3 of my continued coverage of the 2017 NFL Scouting Combine. It's been a great process thus far. This draft is loaded, folks, and we've already gotten through all of the offense. Day 1 and 2 took care of that. And so this is a defensive-heavy draft. If you need help on the defensive side of the football, this is the draft where you want to have as many selections as possible because there is as much talent on that side of the ball as I've ever seen from the time that I've started to watch this thing very closely. I've never seen this much talent at edge rusher. I've never seen this much talent at cornerback. I've never, ever seen this much talent at the safety position either. And so we're going to jump into the first 2 positions that was on display defensively at the Combine, that being the defensive line and the linebackers in day 3 of the Combine. So we're going to jump into that in a second. But first and foremost, welcome to the program. Hopefully you've already watched day 1 and 2 of the Combine of my coverage. If not, go ahead, check that out. It's in the archives. A lot of things to discuss for day 3 as the defensive line. The best player in this draft, pound for pound, Myles Garrett, was on display. He did not disappoint. We'll talk about him a little bit later on. Some other guys I thought really helped themselves in a major way. A couple of guys that were on my radar. One in particular I told you that I was going to be watching out for, and he definitely knocked it out of the park. So we'll talk about all those guys and more on this breakdown. Let's jump into this. We're going to start with the defensive line. They started out the day. Group 1 of the defensive line was loaded with a bunch of guys that I really wanted to watch closely. And they came right out of the gate swinging for the fences, which let me know it was going to be a very fun day to watch. Montavious Adams out of Auburn. You're talking about a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle. 4'8", 840, right out of the box. First guy up, knocks it out of the park, and I'm saying to myself, okay, buckle your seatbelts. It's going to be that type of day. So 172, 10-yard split. You know, with the big guys, the big nasties, the physicals, the trench fighters, you want to look at the 10-yard split. They're not going to be running 40 yards down the field very often. So that 172 is tremendous for a guy his size. And he's one of those guys that I mentioned in my guide to the NFL Scouting Combine, that he's one of those guys that could come off the board relatively quickly. If you're looking for a defensive tackle, I expect him off the board in the second round. So I thought he helped himself with his athleticism. He moved well all day long, and that 4.88 was, to me, the icing on the cake. Jonathan Allen, to me, the consensus number 2 pick in this draft. A lot of people think that he could also be your number 1 selection. He's probably among the safest picks in this draft, but I think most people will go with the upside of a Myles Garrett over a Jonathan Allen. Either way, you can't miss with Allen. If he's healthy, he's one of the best players in this draft. He went out, ran a 5 flat, 174, 10-yard split for Jonathan Allen. So he went out. I thought he looked fluid in the drills. He moved well. He looks the part of a guy that is one of the safest, if not the safest pick in this draft. And he'll come off the board, if not first, second for sure. Again, once the medical checks out, a guy that's had multiple surgeries while at Alabama, if the medical checks out and he passes all of those tests, he's going to be the second player taken in the NFL draft come April 20, what are we talking, 7th, 26th, somewhere in there, day 1 of the draft. He'll hear his name called relatively early, that is for certain. You got Tennessee's Derek Barnett, a guy that was battling some flu-like symptoms, was under the weather, having a hard time keeping fluids down just yesterday. I wasn't sure that he was going to participate. A lot of people wasn't sure if he was going to participate. This is a guy that never missed a game at Tennessee, so he's an Iron Man. And so you had to know. And all I've heard all combine long about Derek Barnett is that this is one of the hardest working guys. You won't find another guy that's going to outwork him. And again, I told you he hasn't missed a game while at Tennessee. Just set the Tennessee record for most career sacks, besting Reggie White by 1 sack. So this is a guy that has done it all at Tennessee, and he came out and all he did was run a 4.88, and this is a big guy we're talking about here, 1.7 split. And again, Mike Mayock, I thought he said it eloquently, he's probably going to run better at his pro day just because he's not going to be under the weather, because he's going to be in much better shape, because he's going to be able to keep fluids down, he's going to be able to go out and perform at a much higher level. So I wouldn't be shocked if that's a sub 4.8 when it's all said and done. But make no mistake about it, I thought he helped himself by coming out. Don't think for one second the scouts and all of the GMs and the people that were in attendance didn't know that this guy was under the weather, and yet he still went out and gutted it out. I could tell you about countless guys that have probably had a similar situation and said, you know what, I'm not going to go out and risk anything. I'm just going to sit down and wait for my pro day. This guy decided to do the opposite, come out and compete. And I think he's going to get a couple of extra stars for going out and competing despite being under the weather. Derek Barnett, I thought, helped himself just by coming out and going through all of the drills and running the 40 at the combine in day number 3. Ohio's Terrell Basham, a guy that I told you needed to keep an eye on, is a very athletic guy that can get after the quarterback. 4.70 in the 40, 1.61, 10-second split. So this is a guy that offers a little bit of versatility. I think he can get after the quarterback as an edge rusher, but I think he can also drop. They put him in the conversion drills when the defensive line was all said and done, and I thought he did a really good job of opening up his hips and being able to drop out in space and be comfortable and not look mechanical. So I think he's the guy that's going to offer a little bit of versatility, and I think Terrell Basham helped himself as he continues the momentum he built from the East-West Shrine game. Florida's Caleb Brantley, 5.15, 40. Again, 10-second split, 1.84 for him. Another one of these guys, and Mike Mayock talked about him being one of those guys that when he's fresh, and you know this is what we talk about. I talk about this every year. When guys are healthy and fresh, when that meter is on green or on that tip of yellow, these guys are highly effective. When that meter comes down to orange and gets into the red, that's when these guys need to tap out and they don't give you maximum effort and they're just dead weight on the field. He's one of those guys. When he is right, he's one of the better defensive tackles in this draft. And I thought he went out, he moved well, but you could tell there were some drills where he got tired, he started to stand straight up, wasn't the same guy. So I could even see it on the field as he was going through the drills. So you just got to know what you're getting with Caleb Brantley if you're going to make that selection with him out of Florida. Michigan's Taco Charlton came out, ran a 4.92 40, a 1.70 10-second split. He's a big man, long individual. Mike Mayock likened him to Carlos Dunlap. I thought he was going to run a little bit faster than 4.9. I thought he was going to be somewhere in that low 4.8 range. But again, if he continues to play the way that he did at Michigan, I don't have any problems with what this guy brings to the table. He's long, he's active, he's fluid, he's a disruptor, and I think that's what he's going to be at the next level. But he did not blow me away at the combine. But again, he's one of those guys, lunch pail, hard hat, coming to work, gonna get it done. I don't question his motor. I don't question his ability to get it done, snap in, snap out. And those are the type of guys that I will vouch for and bang the table for every single day of the week. Then you get to the main attraction, the big name, the big ticket item of the day, Myles Garrett out of Texas A&M. We expected him to come in and be a freak, and that he was. Before you get to the 40 times, and even though he did it after his 40, you still got to marvel at this. 6'4", 272, 33 reps of 2.25, so you're talking about a big physical specimen. 41-inch vert. Let me say that one more time because I don't know if that registered correctly. We're talking about a 6'4", 272-pound man jumping 41 inches. Are you kidding me? That is insane, which just speaks volumes towards the type of athleticism and, more importantly, explosion that he possesses. This guy's going to be an animal at the next level if he can just stay healthy. We saw that last year when he was dealing with those nagging injuries. Not quite the same guy, but when he's right, like you saw in some of the clips, if you watched the combine, and if you didn't, just turn on the UCLA tape. First game of the season. Go look at what this guy was able to do. When he's right, he is a monster and a menace. And so he goes out, runs a 4.64 40, 10-second split of 1.63. He was phenomenal on the day. The one complaint I have with him, and I'm nitpicking here, is that he takes these small choppy steps. It's almost like he's struggling to run, so to speak. I think if he just picked his feet up a little bit more, he'd be even more faster, if that makes any sense to you. But in any event, this guy, with the way that he runs, to still run a 4.64 40 and jump 41 inches is just insane, not to mention the guy's strong. And you heard the different comments and people questioning this guy at the point of attack throughout his career. 33 reps lets me know that this guy is very capable of setting an edge and being a force in the run game as well. So no doubts about Myles Garrett. To me, what he did on Saturday was cement his place in this draft, or excuse me, what he did on Sunday is cement his place in this draft as the number 1 pick in the 2017 NFL draft. Mizzou's Charles Harris, a guy that I look at as an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense, a guy that's going to probably stand up and be an edge pass rusher, a guy that can drop, and he showed that ability on Sunday at the combine, the ability to move out in space. I thought he was very fluid and comfortable out in space, and that's what he's probably going to have to do at the next level anyway. 4.82 40, 1.66 10-second split. So this is a guy that can move, and I think he's a guy that you can rely on if need be to drop him into coverage. But I think where his hat is going to be laid at in this league is on the outside, getting up the field and trying to get to the quarterback. You look at Florida Atlantic's Trey Hendrickson, and this is a guy that I knew nothing about, and one of the guys that blew me away on Sunday. This guy just came out of nowhere for me. Again, didn't know anything about him. He comes in, runs a 4.65, which automatically opened my eyes. Okay, I want to watch this guy closely throughout the day now that you've shown me the athleticism. And that was the first time that he ran. And I said, okay, well, let's see what this second time looks like, because some of these guys can come out, wow you with the first time, then the second time is a 4.77, and you're like, whoa, it's a big discrepancy. What are you really? The next time was like a 4.67, so I'm like, okay, this guy is legit fast and athletic. Now let's see how he moves out in space. He moved well out in space all day long. I was thoroughly impressed with him. And what came to mind was a player that the Chargers took about a year or two ago out of the same school Carson Wentz came from. And he's an outside linebacker, and he lit it up in his conference. And he was so fluid. When I saw him at the combine, I was blown away. And I said, this guy is going to be a freak at the next level. He's going to be a guy that can get it done. I think his name is Kyle Emanuel, if I'm not mistaken, out of North Dakota State. And he reminds me so much of a Kyle Emanuel, a Davis Tull type of player, just very athletic, can move out in space, very comfortable. I really like Trey Hendrickson, and I want to see more of this guy. And I walked away thoroughly impressed, and I said someone's going to get a guy that if they can put him in situations to succeed, they might be able to unearth a gem in this draft in a guy like Trey Hendrickson. Really impressive day for him on day 3 of the combine. This is a guy that I talked about on my guide to the 2017 NFL Scouting Combine, Tanoh Kpassagnon, a Villanova defensive end that is just as raw as the day is long. And my goodness, people, when I tell you this guy is chiseled, he reminds me of O.J. Howard from yesterday, just a freak of epic proportions, to the point where you're like, I don't know if I've ever seen a guy that well put together. O.J. Howard blew me away with just his physical stature yesterday. Broad shoulders, no fat whatsoever. Tanoh Kpassagnon was way more cut than O.J. Howard, and I was blown away by O.J. Howard yesterday. 289 pounds, 6'7", 37-inch arms, This guy is ridiculous. When you see him, I know coaches have to be salivating over the prospects of getting their hands on him. And like I said, a guy that got double-digit sacks last year that still really doesn't know what the hell he's doing yet. He is someone that intrigues me to no end. Runs a 4.8 340, 1.7 3 10-second split. This guy is just an animal, folks. And if they can get their hands on Tanoh Kpassagnon and really sculpt and mold him into the player that they want him to be, he could be one of these guys that in 3 or 4 years from now, we're saying, wow, what a hell of a football player he is. I'm anxious to see where he lands, what kind of defensive line coach or defensive coordinator he ends up with, and how well they teach this young man the game of football. Because if he learns a few moves with his length and athleticism, there's no stopping this guy. He's got everything you need to be a menace at the next level. If he can play with a low pad level, and it's hard for a guy, and you saw that with him in the drills, very stiff. Again, 6'7", 290. What are we talking about here? He ran a 4.8. Just think about that. Again, digest some of these words that I'm saying to you. I just told you a 6'7", 290 football player ran a 4.8, okay? Think about that for a second. That doesn't make any sense, all right? So just keep in mind that we're talking about a physical specimen here, and if he's taught the game the right way and put in positions to succeed, Tanoh Kpassagnon could be one of the steals of the 2017 NFL draft. I told you this is a deep pass rusher draft on my guide to the 2017 NFL Scouting Combine. And it's guys like Tanoh Kpassagnon who won't have an immediate impact in year one, but down the road could potentially add value to a football team. It's guys like him that make this draft so deep. Speaking of deep drafts, Carl Lawson out of Auburn, a guy that we're not even talking about. He was a guy that was talked about heavily before the college football season got underway. And as he dealt with some injuries, didn't have the same type of season that we expected. This is a guy that I looked at and I said, boy, is this guy twitchy. He was explosive all day long. In every single drill, he stood out to me as a guy that is just explosive. He moves very fast, very quick, short area quickness. He gets from here to there in a split second. 4.67 40 tells you that this guy is explosive. 1.60 in terms of the 10-second split lets you know this guy's moving from here to there in short areas very quickly and dynamically. 35 reps of 2.25, which means that this guy's setting a mean edge in the run game, has the ability to do so, can get up the field, can bull rush, can use speed and convert power to speed or speed to power. Either way, this guy's got everything you need to be a big-time pass rusher at the next level. And I think he can even drop into coverage if need be. Like I said, I saw a lot of twitchiness from Carl Lawson. Someone's going to get themselves a guy that, at worst, can be a situational pass rusher and a damn good one at the next level. And again, it's all about getting to the quarterback and disrupting him. And it's guys like Carl Lawson that are going to make money in this league just off of getting to the quarterback. I think he has the ability to do that and do it at a very high level. And I saw the twitchiness today, which I wasn't quite sure of. I saw it at Auburn at times. I saw it on full display at the Combine. Walked away saying Carl Lawson is a guy that I wouldn't mind taking a flyer out on if I'm a team and spending a relatively early pick to do so. I would not feel bad about a second or a third round pick being spent on a guy like Carl Lawson, because I think he can come in, help your football team immediately. Not immediately, immediately. And finally, Malik McDowell out of Michigan State. Here's a guy, 4.86 40, 1.69 10-second split. He's athletically gifted, but he worries me. He's one of those guys, and we're talking about a big physical guy, 6'6", 6'7", 285, 290-pound type guy. He just scares me. You know, he reminds me a lot of Robert Kindiche from last year's draft out of Ole Miss, where you're just like, man, this guy's talented, uber talented, first-round talented, but I just don't know. You know, I don't know what guy I'm getting. Those guys scare the hell out of me. I tell you this every single year. I will take the guy that I know is going to give me 100% effort on every single snap over the guy that is uber talented, but I don't know from snap to snap what the hell I'm going to get out of him. I'll take the guy that is 30% less talented, but I know I'm getting 100% in effort every single down. And most coaches will tell you the same thing. Give me that guy over the guy that is 100% talented, but I don't know from snap to snap if I'm going to get 100% effort or not. Those guys scare the hell out of me. And Mike Mayock made a great point that last year when Michigan State was in the playoffs and was a damn good football team, this guy was dialed in for the most part and locked in and wanted to play football. You go to 2016, Connor Cook leaves to go to the NFL. They're not good at the quarterback position. They're not the same team. They struggle. And he looks disinterested because they're not a good football team. What if he's drafted by a bad football team? Are you going to get the same type of Malik McDowell that last year looked disinterested at times? I don't want to even have to ask that question. If that's a question I have to ask, then I need to move on to another player. So I thought he showed well on the field, though. I thought he looked athletic. I thought he moved around well. He carried his weight well. And, he's a big, long guy. He's got the talent. I worry about his ability to mentally stay focused week in, week out, day in, day out, snap in, snap out. And those are the type of guys I tend to stay away from. But that's group one of the defensive line. We moved to group two of the defensive line. And I was really impressed with group two as well. I think they had more athletes in group two than group one did. It was more of the bigger guys, the big defensive line, defensive tackle, 5-tech type guys. The D-line group two featured guys that could stand up in a 3-4 defense as an outside linebacker, a guy that could be a true base 4-3 defensive end and get pressure on the quarterback, guys that could drop into coverage and be a little bit more comfortable in that setting, like a Tack McKinley, a Jordan Willis, a Tim Williams, a Solomon Thomas, Hassan Reddick. Those guys made up group number two. So you knew this was going to be a much more athletically gifted group. So let's jump into group two of the defensive line. Tack McKinley is where we start out of UCLA. I told you yesterday he's going to have surgery next week. So he's going to be out for quite some time. I think they said 4 to 6 months, if I'm not mistaken. So if he has surgery this week, and we're talking early March, April, May, June, July, he might be ready for training camp. He may not be. We'll see what happens. But in any event, he went out, showcased his athleticism, 4.59 40, 1.61 10-second split for Tack McKinley. 6'2", 250. I'll take it every day of the week. This guy's running a sub 4.6. Big, physical, strong guy that I think can get to the quarterback. I really like what I saw to him, and I actually was very impressed with him out in space as well, which I didn't know how comfortable I would be with him out in space. He looked damn good in space as well. So Tack McKinley, I thought, helped himself a ton with his performance on Sunday, day 3 of the Combine. Larry Ogunjobi, a guy that I told you about as a guy to look out for out of Charlotte. You don't see defensive tackles that are 305 pounds put together this well very often. He is well structured, folks. Big trunks. Everywhere looks like it's solidly built. Not a lot of fat. Most of him is muscle. He's chiseled. He moves very well. 4.98 for a guy that is over 300 pounds. You're talking about a sub 540. That is tremendous. 1.77 10-second split. Larry Ogunjobi, to me, helped himself. He went out and checked the boxes off because on tape, you see athleticism. I've already watched a couple of games of him playing against Louisville in that type of setting where he's chasing around Lamar Jackson. He is a guy that is athletically gifted at 305 pounds, and he showcased that at the Combine, and I thought he helped himself well in his performance in day number 3. Elijah Qualls, speaking of a guy that is athletically gifted for a big man, talking about Elijah Qualls, a guy out of Washington, 313 pounds, 6 feet tall, so it's a small, compact package, but they moved this guy around at Washington. He would be standing up one play as an outside linebacker. Again, 6 feet, 313. On another play, he'd be hand in the dirt, shaded over the center. The next play, he'd be at 5-tech, over the tackle. I mean, they had this guy all over the place. So it was just amazing to watch him run. And I said, look at the big goal. I said, rumble, big man, rumble. This guy was running the drills like a big ninja out there, man. Just light on his feet. I really like Elijah Qualls, and I think he's a guy that I think he really helped himself. 33 reps of 2.25. Okay, one of the best defensive line reps of anybody. Again, him and Myles Garrett, 33 reps. These are the types of guys that you want on your football team. These guys that are physically built and athletic to boot, and that's what Elijah Qualls is as a big 313-pound man. He's physical, but yet he's very nimble on his feet. Hassan Reddick. I've got two big winners in day 3 of the Combine. Hassan Reddick is one of them for me. I knew Hassan Reddick was athletic. I've been watching Hassan Reddick for about 2 years now. When you're watching the Tyler Metacavages of the world and you're watching all of those guys, Tavon Young from last year, you couldn't help but notice Hassan Reddick on tape. So he stood out. Last year, when I was watching all of the Temple guys that got drafted, they had about 3 guys drafted out of Temple last year. They also had a defensive tackle that the Redskins drafted. So they had guys drafted, and I ran into Hassan Reddick then, but I did not know how athletic he was until the East-West game where he showcased that. And like I said, the momentum. I love when guys build a momentum at the East-West game and carry it into the Combine and then continue to build that momentum into their pro day and knock it out of the park. And so he's building a big ball of momentum now. And I think he went from when this process first started to probably a mid-round pick, 3rd, 4th round pick guy, to now after the East-West game, there was conversation about, okay, Hassan Reddick looks good enough to maybe be a 2nd round guy. And now I think with his performance at the Combine, I think he sneaked into the back of the 1st round, a conversation that teams will have about a guy that can get to the quarterback, that can drop into coverage, that can cover a tight end. I think this is a guy that is so versatile that I think he might have snuck himself into the 1st round and made himself some money. 4.5 240. One of the best times of any defensive lineman on the day. A 1.60, a 10-second split. You're talking about a guy that's 6'1", 237 pounds, 36.5-inch vert, 11.1 on the broad, 24 reps of 2.25. You're talking about a guy here that should have been with the linebackers, frankly, because of his body type and his size. You're talking about 237 pounds. He's no one's defensive lineman. He's a linebacker, folks. And what this guy did was he looked at the tight ends yesterday and he said, okay, these guys are all blazing fast. They're running out here. I got to make sure I can match their speed. And that's what he went out and did. And I think Hassan Reddick, and he was the most fluid athlete of the defensive line. Again, I hate to even classify him as a defensive lineman because he's a linebacker, but of any defensive lineman, he was the most fluid. And hell, you throw him into the linebacker group, stands for a guy like the Michigan linebacker, which really he's a safety, Jabril Peppers. He was the most fluid athlete. Okay, if you would have put him with the linebackers, he would have been neck and neck for fluidity with Jabril Peppers. That's how good Hassan Reddick, just out in space, he made everything look easy. And so I just, like I said, one of my big winners of the day was Hassan Reddick. Another guy that I thought was just extraordinary. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and stretch this out to 3 big winners because I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention Solomon Thomas's day. He didn't do one thing wrong on Sunday. He was magnificent. And sometimes I'm a little biased with these Stanford guys because I'm like, they never turn out to be as good as they were at college. But I got a feeling about Solomon Thomas. I don't think he's your standard run-of-the-mill Stanford defensive football player. I don't think he's going to be Trent Murphy at the next level. This guy has the goods, folks. And watching him athletically, this guy's gifted. At 6'3", 73 pounds, 30 reps of 2.25, which means he's setting a physical edge. When he can play inside too. They played him inside at Stanford. They played him outside at Stanford. I think you can move this guy around in some sub packages when you want to put your best pass rushers on the field. I think you might be able to get away with moving this guy inside. You can move him around, use him as a chess piece. A 10-6 broad lets you know that this guy has some explosion to him. And the 4.70 40 at 270, folks. Remember what I just told you. We're talking about a 6'3", 270-pound man. He ran a 4.7 flat and a 1.66 10-second split. This guy's a freak, okay? And I was so impressed with his movement skills. It's one thing to run in a straight line. It's when they ask you to change directions and stop and go much faster than slow. Guys that are 6'3", 275 struggle with that. Okay, it's hard to stop and start 275. He made it look easy, made it look effortless. Even when he did the conversion drills, I was impressed with him as a 275-pound defensive lineman in conversion drills. This guy, to me, had just an outstanding day. There's no way this guy's not a first-round pick. There's no way this guy's not a top 20 pick. If you want Solomon Thomas, you're going to have to spend a top 20 pick. I'm convinced more now than ever before that he's a first-round pick after watching him. And not just a first-round pick, because I think a lot of people assumed he was a first-round pick. I think you might even have to spend a top 15 pick to get your hands on Solomon Thomas. Wouldn't shock me if you had to spend a top 10 pick to get your hands on Solomon Thomas. He's that good, I'm telling you right now. Dalvin Tomlinson out of Alabama, defensive tackle, 5'2", 40, 181, 10-second split, 6'3", 310-pound guy. I thought he moved well all day long. And anytime you're talking about an ex-wrestler in the trenches, you got my attention, because those are the kind of guys that play with leverage. They get good low pad level. They drive guys backwards because they're used to getting down in that stance. And I think that's why he was so effective at Alabama. And he's one of those guys that quietly, nobody's talking about. You don't hear Dalvin Tomlinson's name very often. And he's one of those unsung heroes of that Alabama defense. I think he quietly could be a steal for someone in this draft. I thought he moved well all day long. Tim Williams, another Alabama player. We go back to back with the Bama boys. 4'6", 40, 164, 10-second split, 6'3", 244 pounds. I thought he would run faster. I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't disappointed in the 4'6", still fast. They kept making the Von Miller comparison. So when you keep beating that into my skull repeatedly, now I'm thinking, okay, this guy's going to run a sub 4'6", okay? So now I'm thinking 4'5", 4'5", something in that range. And then when he basically runs a 4'7", I'm not as impressed, and I don't want to hear the Von Miller comparison anymore. But then wait, there's more. They do the bag drills where you got to get around the bag, and it's really a get-off drill where you rip the bag, you slap the second one, you rip it, and you turn. They want you to come down that corner with a hard angle. They want you to flatten out your angle, get to the quarterback, finish the drill. His get-off is stupid, folks. It is dumb stupid, all right? I saw him on that first get-off, and I said, my goodness, that is insanely quick. All right. Now that's where the Von Miller comparison comes into play. As an athlete, totally, he's nowhere near in the class of a Von Miller, a Khalil Mack, or those guys. But you're talking explosion off the snap. He's every bit as explosive and dynamic as a Khalil Mack, as a Von Miller. He's scary getting off the football. He's a guy that, and again, his off the field trouble. He's already admitted at the combine, hey man, I failed a couple of drug tests while at Alabama, man, a few of them joints. So he's got a checkered past. You're going to have to do your homework on him, but make no mistake about it. This guy can get to the quarterback. I'm going to tell you right now, his get off is insane. Saw it at the combine with my own two eyes. Walked away thoroughly impressed with Tim Williams and his ability to get off the football. But again, I thought he would be a little bit more fluid out of space. Thought he would be a little bit more athletic. He wasn't. But look, forget about all of that. His job is to get to the quarterback, and I think he can do that at the next level. And finally, another guy that I thought had a tremendous day, helped himself a ton. Jordan Willis of K-State, another guy that could be a pass rusher for you. Highly productive at Kansas State. 4.5, 3.40. I didn't see that coming. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought he was going to be a 4.6 guy, and he ran a 4.53. I said, hey, that was lucky. Do it again, because he's a strider. He's not one of these guys that's a fluid, effortless guy. He's a strider. He's one of those gazelle-type runners, and he did it again. And I said, oh, shit. And the 10-second split tells you all you need to know. 1-5-4 10-second split. Blew everybody out of the water in his group, and honestly had the best 10-second split of anybody classified as a defensive lineman on the day. So That was insane. And he moved well all day long. I was just drill after drill after drill. He kept just jumping off the screen at me as a guy that just was moving really well. 6'4", 255. Again, in a draft where you're deep at pass rusher, add Jordan Willis's name to the list of guys that I think is going to come off the board relatively early. He's not a first-round pick, but I think in the second round, if you don't act fast, you won't get your hands on Jordan Willis because of a day like this. I think he opened some eyes. Some evaluators are going to go back, put the tape on, and what they're going to find is a guy that is relentless, works hard, and gets after it. And they're going to pair that up with what they saw at the combine, and someone's going to pull the trigger on Jordan Willis in the second round. I'm convinced of it. He made himself some money with his performance in day 3 of the combine. Switching gears now, we're going to move to the linebackers. And this was a group that I knew nothing about. I'm not going to lie to you. There were a select few of guys that I knew about. Zach Cunningham, the big names. All the big names I was familiar with. Zach Cunningham, Raekwon McMillan, Jabril Peppers, T.J. Watt, Duke Riley, Reuben Foster, who was dismissed from the combine, asked to leave. We talked about that already. We'll talk about it again when we get to him. Ben Boulware. Those were the names that I was aware of. But then there were guys like Alex, I knew I was going to mess his name up. Out of Florida, okay? I can't think of how to say his name. It'll come to me. Alex Alizoni or something like that. Alizoni. He was a guy that I looked at and I said, okay, let's see what you got. They talked about his injury history and how he's struggled to stay healthy at Florida, which is probably why I didn't know much about him. I knew more about his teammate Gerard Davis, but Gerard Davis. I didn't know much about him, and it's probably because he was always banged up, dealing with some type of injury. But he showed out. Let's just call him Alex A. out of Florida, okay? And his name isn't even that hard to say. I just can't remember how to say it. 4'6", 40. At 6'3", 241, I thought he moved around well. He's athletically gifted. So that's not an issue for him. His issue is staying healthy. I thought he moved well all day long. And so the questions he's going to have to answer, can you stay healthy? And I think if he can answer that, then someone's going to take this guy in the mid-rounds because he's athletically gifted. And you saw that at the combine. Guy that I was thoroughly impressed with, Tyus Bowser out of Houston, 4'6", 540. Again, these linebackers were running. This was a fast group of linebackers. Again, sort of mirroring what we saw with the tight ends yesterday. If you're going to keep up with those guys, then you need to be athletic. And these guys, they came out and they showcased athleticism. Tyus Bowser was one of the better athletes in this group. Thought he was tremendous all day long. At 6'3", 247, he's a big linebacker. In a day and age where the linebackers are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, he's a big guy, and he ran well. He moved well in space. I thought he did everything well. Was really impressed with him. He looks the part of a 3-down linebacker in a day and age where there's so many nickel and sub packages and linebackers are coming on and off the field. Second down, they're switching out guys. Third down, they're getting smaller guys in there. He looks like one of those guys that could stay on the field all 3 downs, and those are rare commodities in this day and age in the league. And speaking of which, Raekwon McMillan, my other huge winner of the day. Remember, I mentioned him as the player to watch at the linebacker position. I said, look, we know about all the big names, the Reuben Fosters and all these guys, Zach Cunningham, all these other names, but nobody's talking about Raekwon McMillan anymore. And I feel like people are sleeping on this guy. And it's usually tough to sleep on an Ohio State player because normally those guys get all of the accolades and the attention. But he was being slept on. He woke some people up with his performance. I'm telling you right now, I want he impressed me so much. I want my Redskins to draft him. I think you can get him in the second round, but you got to get him fast. Wouldn't shock me if he went in the first. He was that impressive in day 3 of the combine. He blew me away. 4.61 for a guy that's 6'2", 240, 23 reps of 2 1/4. He's a thumper. He's a physical downhill smasher. Hit you in your mouth. Love Raekwon McMillan's game. Always have at Ohio State. He was always one of my favorites. Even when they had the linebacker that got drafted in the first round by the Jets last year. I always was a Raekwon McMillan fan, and he checked every single box. He looked so smooth, so fluid in every drill, looked so comfortable out in space. He screamed 3-down linebacker today, and I didn't think he was. And I wasn't sure, and I said, hey, please prove it to me. He said, I got you, bruh. I got you. And he did. He walked away as a tremendously huge winner in day 3 for me. Vandy's Zach Cunningham, 4'6", 840, 6'3", 234-pound outside linebacker, or in this case, inside linebacker. I think he's going to be a weak side linebacker in a 4-3 defense, if you're asking me. I thought he would run fast. I'm not going to lie to you. 4'6", 8 isn't bad. Actually, that's a great time. I just thought at 234 pounds, I looked at him as one of these guys that was going to run. And I think Mike Mayock mentioned the name Alec Ogletree, and that's kind of the mold. He's got such a slender build. He looks almost like a defensive back more so than a linebacker. So, Alec Ogletree was an ex-safety that converted to linebacker. So naturally, I was expecting that kind of speed. Not necessarily Ogletree speed, because remember, more Ogletree, please. He ran like a 4.46 or something like that at the combine. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting somewhere in that 4.58 range. He went 4.68, so a little disappointing, but he moved well throughout the day. He was just a guy that I thought would be a little bit more faster. That's all. Jabril Peppers had no business with this group, none. And he explained it. I love this. After the combine, I walked away with a new affinity and a newfound respect for Jabril Peppers because I didn't really know him, to be honest. I watched him play. I knew what he was capable of. I didn't know how fast he was. Okay, I will admit, I thought he was going to run a lot slower than he did. I didn't know the type of athlete we were dealing with here. And people have been telling me about Jabril Peppers. My man Nick at Night, Showtime, has been telling me he's a huge Michigan Wolverine fan. He's been telling me about Jabril Peppers all season long, ad nauseum. This guy's the truth. This guy's this, he's that. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. No, Jabril Peppers is legit. And I love his physicality. I love his mentality. I love his attitude. He spoke well. They told him at the combine, look, you're a linebacker. You played linebacker. We're classifying you as a linebacker. You want to work out with the D-backs? You got to come in and you got to do the linebacker drills. So what did he do? A guy that was preparing for the defensive back drills the entire time. This is a week before the combine, week and a half. He says, okay, fine. A lot of these drills, he's never practiced them before, and he came out and he blazed it. Okay, killed the 40. He's a 5'11", 213-pound. Put on 13 pounds for the combine. His playing weight was 200 pounds. Carried it well. Ran a 4.46 40. Did Jabril Peppers. He was disappointed in that time. Disappointed in his vert. He jumped a 35.5-inch vert, like a 10.6 broad, and he was disappointed in those numbers. And I'm like, wow. That's the kind of competitor that he is. Did a backflip, clapped in the middle of his backflip. This guy's extraordinary. I walked away, like I said, with a newfound affinity and respect for Jabril Peppers. And then we're going to see him again tomorrow in the final day of the combine with the safeties, where he really naturally belongs. Love what he did on day 3 of the combine. TJ Watt, brother of JJ Watt, came out, acquitted himself well, 4.70 40, 6'4", 252 pounds, physical guy, can get after the quarterback, can do a little bit of everything. He's relentless. Really like what I saw out of him. Thought he moved well, thought he did everything he needed to do, benched well, jumped well, he tested well, and so he's going to come off the board probably as early as the second round is TJ Watt. LSU's Duke Riley is a guy that I had my eye on, watching him and his teammate Kendall Beckworth at LSU. It was hard not to notice Riley when watching Beckworth at LSU. Those two played well together, and he's another one of these one-year wonders. We've seen these guys of recent memory at LSU. Quan Alexander, one-year starter, gets picked by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Is playing really well in the National Football League. Last year, Deion Jones, same thing. A special teams demon for years, captain on the team, gets his opportunity to play for 1 year, lights it up, second-round pick of the Falcons, helps them get to the Super Bowl. And maybe a guy like Duke Riley could come in and do the same thing, showcase the athleticism, 4.58 40 at 6'4", feet, 232 pounds. Same kind of build as a Quan Alexander, as a Deion Jones. 4'5", 840. I thought he was impressive. Thought he moved well all day long. I liken him to a guy that I'm going to talk about a little bit later, and Jayon Brown out of UCLA. I thought he moved extremely well. And those guys are so comfortable out in space. I think Duke Riley helped himself with his performance, because if you didn't know, now you know. Duke Riley is a guy that can come out and help you, and I think he's a guy that can come in, run with some tight ends, run with some backs out of the backfield, and I think he helped himself tremendously in day 3 of the Combine. Reuben Foster of Alabama fame, not at the Combine, showed up to do his medical, and I don't know if he was going to perform anyway. I think he was dealing with some things, but he got into an altercation with one of the medical staff members, was sent home, and it's the kind of thing you see from athletes who have been pampered their entire lives, where he's screaming, "Do you know who I am?" And that's so unnecessary. I don't know what was said. I don't know what happens. It doesn't matter. It was unnecessary. So he was dismissed from the Combine. So he wasn't there, but he would have probably been one of the better athletes of this group if he would have been able to perform. So another guy to throw into the list of linebackers that's going to be available in the draft that's probably going to come off the board relatively high. He's just got to be vetted. Now with this situation, they're going to vet him. They're going to ask him what the hell happened, want to get to the root of this situation and make sure that this isn't something that's going to happen if a team is to spend a top 10 pick on him moving forward. Speaking of which, I talked about a guy that helped himself in Duke Riley. UCLA's Jayon Brown, 4'7", 40, 6 feet, 231 pounds. This guy looks like a safety. He moves like a safety, but he's a linebacker. And those are the type of guys that fit in today's NFL. The guy that can come down like a Sua Cravens, run with the tight end, run with the back out of the backfield, but still be physical in the box. Jayon Brown is a guy that can run sideline to sideline. I saw it at the Combine. He moved well, changed directions extremely well, very gifted. I walked away wowed by his performance. And another one of these guys that I think is going to come off the board relatively quickly because of the new day and age of the NFL and needing to have a guy that at worst can come in and be a dime nickel linebacker for you in passing situations. You bring a guy like Jayon Brown in, I think he can help you right away on third downs if nothing else. And so I thought he showed that kind of athleticism in day number 3. Clemson's Ben Boulware continued the Clemson tradition this season of not running a 40, which I don't understand, but it seems like they made a conscious decision as a group to not run. I told you yesterday Jordan Leggett didn't run his 40, the big-time tight end out of Clemson. Mike Williams yesterday did not run his 40. The only guy that ran a 40 at the Combine was Deshaun Watson that went to Clemson. So I think Wayne Gallman ran his 40 as well on the first day, but some of these guys decided not to run their 40, which was disappointing. Ben Boulware, he's just slow. I think the guys that worry about their time are afraid to run. If you don't have anything to hide, then you run your 40. That's why Wayne Gallman went out and ran. That's why Deshaun Watson went out and ran. If you don't have anything to hide, then you go out and you run your 40. If you're hiding something, then you think you need more time to prepare, then you don't run your 40. Ben Boulware, slow. You know who I liken him to is a guy that last year, highly productive football player. A lot of people liked him, big name, but when you get to this level, he's just not good enough. He's not athletic enough to help you. And that's a Scooby Wright III type of player. I think Ben Boulware is in that same mold, 6 feet, 238 pounds. Same thing Tyler Medicavage ran into. Same thing Scooby Wright III ran into last year. Just not big enough, not athletic enough. And what's going to end up happening to Ben Boulware is he's going to be a late round pick or not drafted at all, going to have to find a way to make a team. And he's already tired of hearing about not being big enough, fast enough, and all that stuff. But that's the matter of fact in this league now, and it's a shame because he's a good football player. But again, he's just not athletic enough in a league where you've got to be able to run and be physical. I don't know if he can run fast enough to be able to be a guy that gets drafted at all. We'll see what happens. Last year, Medicavage got drafted in the 7th, and I think Scooby Wright did as well. So we'll see if Ben Boulware can crack an earlier round than the 7th if he is in fact drafted. And I thought he was okay. I wasn't blown away by anything he did at the Combine. And finally, Tennessee's Jalen Reeves-Maben, Really impressed with him. He again, just like Jayon Brown, another guy that is really comfortable out in space, man. This guy looked the part. Didn't run a 40. Okay, don't have any reason as to why he didn't do that because he looked so fluid out in space. I would have thought he would have been comfortable running a 40 and doing a damn good job of doing so. But in any event, he chose not to do it. 6 feet, 230 pounds. Another one of these guys, much like a Jayon Brown, like I just said, come in dime and nickel situations, run with another team's tight end, run with the team's running back out of the backfield, and I think he could do a great job. His change of direction was awesome. His footwork was great. I thought he got in and out of breaks cleanly. He looked the part, caught the ball well. I thought he looked the part of a guy that could be a difference maker in someone's sub package in his rookie season if he's able to make a squad. He looked good. I wish he would have ran his 40. I would love to know how fast he is. I feel like you're hiding something from me when you don't run, but you participate in all of the on-the-field drills. So a little disappointed that he didn't run, but he looked damn good in every single drill that I saw him participate in. So that's day 3 in a nutshell, man. I walked away from day 3 just floored by the athleticism displayed by these defensive linemen and linebackers. I feel like the league is getting more and more athletic each and every single year. You see the tight ends and how athletic they are. You got to combat that with speed. Nothing else is going to keep up with them. No physicality or length is going to keep up with those tight ends. They're too fast. You need to have athleticism to match and mirror that. You got that in day 3 with these linebackers. Really impressed with these guys. And like I said, some standouts. Raekwon McMillan for me, big time day. A guy like Hassan Reddick, big time day. Myles Garrett checked all the boxes. Jabril Peppers checked all the boxes. Jonathan Allen checked all the boxes. Those guys, we know, blue chippers coming off the board quickly. But the guys like Hassan Reddick, the guys like Raekwon McMillan that you weren't sure about, you needed to have these things made a lot clearer and apparent to you. They did exactly that. There are no more foggy questions about Hassan Reddick or Raekwon McMillan's athleticism. Those things were cleared up. Those guys can get it done. And I think you're talking about 3 down linebackers for both of those young men. So that's day 3 of my combine coverage. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on the Louie Tee Network. Got one more day of combine coverage, so come back as we wrap this thing up with the defensive backs, corners, and safeties. By far the 2 deepest positions in this draft. It should be a ton of fun. Bart Scott can't wait. Remember, we're changing the game one live feed at a time. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Louie Tee Network on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at In the Lab Room. I'm also on Facebook. In the Lab Room is the Facebook page. And I'm now on IG, on Instagram. Give me a follow there. It's ITZ me, Louie T, on Instagram. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.